Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. Want to improve your organization's customer service? Looking for insider tips to knock your customer socks off? Then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Yannick Grant.
Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. On today's episode, our guest is Eric Karofsky. Eric Karofsky is an award-winning CX, UX, and employee engagement industry expert who leads VectorHX, a human experience agency. So without further delay, sit back, plug your earphones in, and let's jump right into this conversation with Eric. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Now, Eric, can you share with our listeners a little bit about your journey, how you got from where you were to where you are today?
Sure. So for about 20 to 25 years, I've been in the agency and consultancy world, and I've led very large projects for brands like Michelin, Royal Caribbean, Fidelity, and others. I went through some great experiences there, built some great properties, and realized I never went client side. So my next step, I ended up going to the Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard, which, if you don't know of it, is just an amazing organization. They study DNA, RNA, proteins, and they try and understand the cause for disease. It's a pretty large organization, and I ran user experience for them and helped develop all of the different ways that they analyze the human genome and other genomes. And then for about 2.5 years, I've been off on my own, starting VectorHX and building it, and it's been great. And what VectorHX does is we go ahead and what we do is pretty straightforward. We make sure that when you interact with a business, whether it's through a website, app, in person, phone, or chat, it's smooth and enjoyable. And it's been a great ride so far.
All right. So you said before we actually started the recording that you're based in Boston, correct?
I am based in Boston, exactly.
Do you only serve customers in the United States, or is your business open globally? Like you serve
Uh,
customers all over?
we currently only serve clients in the US. That's not that There's no reason that we couldn't do it larger, more expansive, but currently only US.
Okay. Now, customer experience is continually an area that is transforming, right? Customers' behaviors, their expectations, their needs. If you were to, I know we're like almost the first quarter of 2025 is finished and we're barreling fast towards the end of the second quarter. If you were to identify maybe two or three overarching themes that you believe has been an influential, driver for customer experience based on interactions that you've had with your customers as well as an industry expert, what would those two to three, overarching themes be?
Yeah, so I mean, AI obviously is just a huge theme,
Hmm.
and it's attacking us from so many different ways, and it's something that I am genuinely very excited about. I hear a lot of people that are concerned, and I get the concern, but to me, it just seems like there's a lot of opportunity. You know, it's it, it, it's a tool. It's not a solution. So when you start thinking about it as a tool, that means it begs you to want to learn about the tool more and figure out how do you utilize it to the best of its advantages and the best of your advantages. So to me, it's just a great opportunity. One of the other trends that I see a lot is just, and maybe the bad side of the AI, is people just jumping so quickly into chat. I'm seeing a lot of companies, obviously, into chat, and so far, except for a few, they're pretty rough experiences. So me as a consumer, it's almost like the call centers of the 80s where you get stuck in these awful loops just talking to computers, and you're talking to computers, and all it does is increase frustration. That's something that I'm looking forward to, people that have implemented chat, improving their chat experience.
Hmm. Do you find, like, for example, in Jamaica, we're still a heavily telephone interaction driven society. But I know when I do research, I've seen that like other Caribbean territories, they are more like data driven, meaning their customers will more maybe want to log on to a chat to have a conversation, whereas a Jamaican would more take up the phone and want to physically have a conversation with someone. In your experience, do you believe that that is cultural? And do you think organizations should focus on trying to like get their customers to a particular channel to communicate with the company, or should it be organic where the customer just goes into that channel based on what they naturally feel comfortable with?
Yeah, great question. Certainly it is cultural. It also is situational,
Mhm.
and it's demographic based. I think the real thing that I counsel companies is to understand their personas, and understand the journeys that those personas want to go through for different sorts of situations. So, me, myself, as a consumer, sometimes I want to pick up the phone and talk to somebody if I feel it's more complicated or sensitive in some manner. And sometimes it's nice to be able to do it by chat. While I'm working, I just have a chat window open. But us as, customer experience folks, I think we really need to understand what is that ideal journey, not to force them down one path and make sure that whatever channel that they choose works brilliantly for them.
Yeah, agreed. Now, you mentioned a little bit about AI earlier as one of the driving trends in customer experience. If we were to take a little bit of time to kind of just talk about AI leadership and maybe just explain for us how AI capabilities should be driving strategy in businesses, and maybe give us an example if you have a customer who, has done that.
Yeah. So, again, I kind of think about AI as a tool, and it does some things really well, some things not as well. Albeit it seems, almost every week it's doing another thing really, really well. Uh, it's just moving so incredibly fast. But understanding all of the capabilities, understanding all of the places that you can go ahead and find efficiencies, I think becomes really important.
Mhm.
So one place that I'm working with right now is one of the large pharmaceutical companies. And they do a lot in the beginning of their research. They do these things called literature reviews. And what a literature review is, they have some sort of question, scientific question that they want to understand a disease or a demographic or some sort of interaction, and they work with a vendor to go ahead and comb through all of the different literature over the past X amount of years, and they can come up with hundreds of different articles from different journals, all academic papers. They then go ahead and sift through those to find out what are the articles, and it's usually about 100 or so, or might be about 100 or so, and then what that vendor does is they read through that and they take every single data point in those articles, or many different data points in those articles because they're defined what they're specifically looking for.
Mhm.
And they transpose that into an Excel document. And these Excel documents are hundreds of columns long, hundreds of rows deep. And that might just be for one journal. Um, I mean, they are massive efforts, and they take anywhere from about 6 months to do, and about $250,000.
Wow.
So this is a perfect case for AI.
Yeah.
So what I'm working with them right now is going through how do we train the AI models to go ahead and review all of those publications. They're all, or many of them are public. Review all of those, automatically have the AI suggest which of the articles might be more relevant than others, and then a human goes ahead and approves it.
Mhm.
Then the AI goes ahead and takes all of the information and inputs it into a spreadsheet or some sort of other mechanism. And
Mhm.
then what the human does is validate that the AI got it right. So what we're doing is we're moving it from about 6 months initially down to about 2 months. And the reason for that 2 months is because the human is validating a lot of the information. We anticipate as that validation gets better and as we continue to train those models, we're going to get it down to about 2 weeks. So
That is
it's
good.
over like a 95% improvement in both time as well as cost.
Yeah. And efficiency. I mean, if you're cutting time
Efficiency,
down, you're
yeah.
definitely more efficient.
And yeah, absolutely. And, I shouldn't have really even stopped there of saying it's the 95% improvement because that's great and that's wonderful.
Mhm.
And therefore, the company maybe can make some more money, the pharmaceutical company. The real benefit is, it takes about 10 to 15 years to bring a drug to market. And McKinsey has recently done some research and found that scientists spend about 20% of their time looking for documents and looking for information. If AI can start shrinking that time, and throughout the entire drug development life cycle, we're talking almost about a year and a half shorter in getting a drug to market. That
Mhm.
means families benefit a year and a half sooner to see their loved ones, cured or benefiting from some sort of medicine. And
Mhm.
that's the
Yeah.
real result that we're looking at.
Agreed. Treatment gets to market faster, which helps more people.
Exactly.
Brilliant. All right. I like that example. Thank you so much for sharing, Eric.
Sure.
Now,
Thank
Eric,
you.
could you also share with us what's the one online resource, tool, website, or application that you absolutely can't live without in your business?
Well, certainly one of the AI models, I usually jump between many of them. The one that I've been using mostly right now is Claude, and I use it for a lot of different things. I find it enormously beneficial, almost like a partner that I interact with, ask questions, and then, I take its answers and make them more useful for my needs. So that's one of them. I also use Notion a lot.
Okay.
I find Notion really, really good. I've built a solution, a bunch of different interactions, if you know Notion, that manages my business and
Okay.
tracks all the conversations I'm having, et cetera.
Hmm. Lovely. So we'll have both of those applications in the show notes of this episode for our listeners who would like to tap into those two awesome resources. Now, can you share with us maybe one or two books that you have read? It could be a book that you read a very long time ago, or even one that you've read recently, but it has had a great impact on you.
Yeah, so I'll say the things that have helped the most. They're back in business school, and was probably
Hmm.
the best business school class I ever took, and that was negotiation,
Hmm.
and just basic negotiation tactics. And there's a whole bunch of books in there that are relevant. It's hard to say one that is more better than another. Getting to Yes is one that I remember that I really liked. So I think any sort of, for listeners, any sort of negotiation tactics that you can learn about are really helpful, and they really help in not just getting a better deal, but just help you have a better, more pleasant, more mutually beneficial negotiation. Um,
All right.
Another one, which is an older book, is by Don Norman, The Design of Everyday Things.
Hmm.
That's another book that I really like. And you might think it's just about product design, but it really talks about customer friction and
Hmm.
how to go ahead and get above customer friction. So, in my UX life, I certainly remember components of it and leverage different components of the learnings. But
Hmm.
as a customer experience person, it's just as beneficial.
All right. Now, Eric, as a business owner, could you share with our listeners maybe one or two things that you do that helps you to stay motivated every day? Because we're human, right? And, there are days when we might not feel as engaged or as energized. And on those days, what really drives you to keep going?
There's so much going on in the space that I'm lucky enough to participate in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I mentioned it before with AI. There's just so much going on and so many ways to leverage it that, people really haven't thought of or they're just starting to touch on. So, it feels so much to me of the internet boom back in, the early 2000s, where there was a new site coming out every day that did something new that you never thought was possible.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's what's going on now. So that generally gets me excited. I also find that working with different people and being just generally interested in those people as individuals is something that gets exciting for me. Um, Understanding what motivates them, understanding what they're looking to get out of, their job or, and this goes for clients as well, just building relationships with them. I think, that's just a place for inspiration and generates excitement for me.
All right, perfect. Can you also share with our listeners what's the one thing that's going on in your life right now that you're really excited about? Either something you're working on to develop yourself or your people.
Um, all right, so I guess continuing the AI thread, there are some apps out there, the Vibe apps, the no-code apps, like Bolt.new and Lovable, I find absolutely amazing. So for those that haven't used them, I urge you to go ahead and do the free sign up. They give you a certain amount of credits, and what you're doing is it's all no code. So you just explain what you want, kind of like what you're using with ChatGPT. You need to have the right type of prompt, or the better prompt usually gets a better result. But you just tell it what to do, and it builds a full stack application. And it's incredible. And I've built a few of these applications, and I've modified them and grown with them. And one of them has been a resource that I use in my business, and another one is a resource that I use in my when I'm not working and not with my family. I'm down in a wood shop. I do a lot of woodworking, and one of the
Oh, that's
tools I
nice.
built was for woodworking. And it's just incredible, these tools that are out there now.
All right. Okay. So we'll have those two applications that our listeners can tap into if they're not using them already. Now, our listeners would have tapped into this interview, Eric, and they're quite intrigued with your journey. They're quite intrigued with your organization, and they'd like to connect with you online. Where can they find you online?
Yeah, the best two places, certainly my website, VectorHX,
Mhm.
VECTORH as in human, X as in experience. So vectorhx.com, and also LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn all the time, talking with people, posting articles. So those are probably the best places to reach me.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing.
Sure,
Now,
thank you.
before we wrap our episodes up, we always like to ask our guests, do you have a quote or a saying that during times of adversity or challenge, you'll tend to revert to this quote? If for any reason you get derailed or you get off track, the quote kind of helps to get you back on track. Do you have one of those?
So there's one quote that I like, and it's one that we all know, Benjamin Franklin, tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. And that's one I think about a lot, especially as owning a business, and bringing people in, and, the better that I can take people that are more junior, and teach them up and give them skills and really involve them, that benefits me, my client, and certainly the person that's working for me at the moment. And so that's something that's always kind of in the back of my mind.
Brilliant. All right. Thank you so much for sharing that quote.
Sure.
Well, Eric, we are at the end of our interview. We just want to extend our deepest gratitude to you for taking time out of your busy day to hop on our podcast and share some of these awesome insights about your journey, about your organization, VectorHX, and just a little bit about artificial intelligence and what it's really doing, and that we really only have touched the surface of what it has the potential to do. And, just a little bit of your insight on experiences that you've had with organizations that you've worked with, as well as, just some predictions as to where you see the possibility of AI taking us. So it was a great conversation, and I just want to say thank you again.
Yannick, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Just want to remind our listeners that you can join us in our private Facebook group, Navigating the Customer Experience Community, and feel free to follow us on X at Navigating CX. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant.
Thanks for listening. For more awesome resources to take your customer service game to another level, head over to navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. See you next time.